The human mind, once a fertile garden of ideas and dreams, has become a field ravaged by the haste, alienation, and false promises of the modern world. A damaged mind is not born that way. It is forged in the constant friction between hope and reality, between the genuine desire to be and the brutal imposition of appearance. We are heirs to a society that has transformed consciousness into a commodity, that measures dignity by performance, that demands incessant productivity, but forgets the humanity that pulses behind the numbers. When the mind is wounded, it is not just the individual who bleeds. It is the reflection of a collective that has lost its sense of the essential, that has preferred the gears of the machine to the silence of the spirit, that has cultivated excess and scarcity at the same time, an excess of stimuli, a scarcity of meaning. Recovering a damaged mind is, therefore, an act of resistance against the forces that want us fragmented, submissive, and trained. We live in a time when clocks dictate more than the heart. Modern man wakes not because he has had enough rest, but because a shrill alarm has decreed the beginning of his daily servitude. He feeds not on the body's natural hunger, but on the urgency imposed by timed intervals. He works not for the pleasure of creation, but for the fear of lack, the invisible terror of not living up to expectations. In this environment, the mind, which should be a space for contemplation and freedom, becomes a repository of worries, a screen congested with incessant notifications, a labyrinth with no way out. The soul, suffocated by so many demands, loses the ability to rest in the simple, to find beauty in the small, to recognize greatness in silence. A damaged mind is not reduced to fatigue or forgetfulness. It loses itself. It loses the freshness of curiosity, the sweetness of wonder, the lightness of imagination. It becomes a repeater of patterns, a prisoner of comparisons, consumed by the fear of not measuring up to what the world demands. But who determines this height? Who defined that life must be rushed, that value must be measured in numbers, that time is only useful if converted into profit? These invisible shackles were imposed little by little, disguised as progress, packaged in promises of comfort, but always exacting a price, the erosion of inner self. To resist this process, it is necessary to relearn the art of little. The man who sits in the shade of a tree, who rests his body against the trunk and closes his eyes to feel the wind, already teaches more about mental health than any modern productivity manual. The simple basket of bread beside it symbolizes a forgotten truth. Abundance is not in hoarding, but in needing little. Recovering the mind is, first and foremost, rediscovering the value of the essential. It is allowing oneself to be free from the tyranny of comparisons, from the dictatorship of opinions. It is choosing to live more slowly, more attentively, more presently. Society may mock what it calls simplicity, may extol the glitter of shop windows, may promise happiness in consumer packages. But none of this satisfies the soul's hunger. The human heart asks for something that cannot be bought. It asks for presence. It asks for silence. It asks for space to flourish unhurriedly. A healthy mind is not one that knows everything, does everything, responds to everything. It is one that aligns with life in its essence, that finds beauty in the small, that knows how to rest without guilt, that recognizes that living is more than producing. Rescuing a damaged mind is, therefore, a gesture of courage. It means rejecting excess and embracing the clarity of the little. It means not being ashamed of pause, but understanding it as a sacred right. It means understanding that we are not cogs in a machine, but sparks of an existence that demands contemplation. When a man closes his eyes beneath the tree and breathes deeply, he reconciles himself with something greater than himself, with life that pulses unhurriedly, with nature that teaches without demanding, with the silence that heals without words. The modern world will continue to try to capture the mind with its traps of speed and consumption. But there will always be those who resist, those who choose the field over the factory, the shade of the tree over the suffocating office, simple bread over the empty banquet. True freedom has never been in possessing much, but in needing little. And it is in this little that infinity is found. It is in this little that the wounded mind finds rest. It is in this little that life flourishes again. The first deep wound that corrodes the mind is that of haste. The pace of today's world is not the pace of life. It is the pace of exploitation, accumulation, and endless competition. A mind that runs without pause loses the space for reflection, rest, and contemplation, and with it becomes ill. The human heart was not made to beat to the rhythm of machines, but to the rhythm of eternity, of the cycles of nature, of the necessary intervals, those who allow us to breathe and reorganize our souls. To heal a damaged mind, we must regain time to feel, to be with ourselves, to do nothing but exist. Rest has ceased to be a privilege and has become a duty for those who wish to survive the machinery that insists on crushing us. We must declare war quickly, cultivate creative leisure, and reclaim the grandeur of a silence that does not fear solitude, but celebrates it as a space for reconnection. Another poison that destroys the mind is the lie of comparison. We live immersed in digital showcases, where every human being is reduced to a spectacle, where real life is replaced by carefully edited performances. A mind continually exposed to comparison loses its integrity because it always sees itself as insufficient, as a failure, as a shadow of what could be. To heal a mind wounded by this cruel logic, we must reclaim authenticity. Being true to ourselves is the most revolutionary gesture of our time, because the world wants us molded, homogeneous, predictable. Healing is shedding masks, abandoning the stage of other people's approval, and daring to be who you are, even if it costs you the admiration of others. It's accepting the beauty of the imperfect, the unfinished, the human in all its contradictions. A mind damaged by comparison only finds peace when it frees itself from the need to appear and returns to inhabit the sacred territory of being. But perhaps the cruelest scar is the one opened by hopelessness. A mind without hope is like a sky without stars. It continues to exist but loses the ability to guide. The wounds of hopelessness arise from a society that kills dreams, that stifles imagination, that offers a future only to those who can afford it. Recovering a mind wounded to this extent requires rekindling the flame of hope, not as an empty illusion, but as a creative force. Hope is not passively waiting for tomorrow to be better. It is acting in the present with the conviction that something better can be built. Healing requires reconnecting with imagination, with art, with the ability to glimpse horizons not yet visible. We must restore the mind's freedom to dream without limits, to believe that there are still paths beyond the paved road of conformity. Hope is the antidote that rebuilds a broken mind and transforms it into a source of renewal for the entire body. However, the recovery of a damaged mind is not just an individual process, but also a collective one. A society that sickens its minds needs to acknowledge its guilt and rebuild itself on new foundations. The mind does not exist in isolation. It breathes in encounters, in conversations, in affection, in the invisible bonds that unite us. A wounded mind finds healing when it is welcomed, when it is not judged for its fragility, but embraced in its humanity. To achieve this, we need communities that don't just celebrate success, but that make room for vulnerability. We need relationships that are not transactions, but sharing. We need a world where a person's value is not tied to what they produce, but to the simple fact of existing. Healing the mind will always also be healing the social fabric that is now torn apart. Another essential key to restoring a damaged mind is reconnecting with nature. The modern city, with its suffocating concrete, its luminous screens, and its incessant pollution, has disconnected human beings from the rhythm of the earth, the songs of birds, and the cycles of the sun and moon. A mind enclosed within walls of steel and glass loses its vitality because the human soul was made to dialogue with creation. Healing requires a return to our roots, walking barefoot on the earth, listening to the sound of running water, gazing at the stars without artificial filters. Contact with nature is a silent therapy, an invisible balm that restores what technology and the market have stolen from us. Recovering the mind also means relearning to live in harmony with the natural world, remembering that we are part of it and that our sanity depends on this connection. There is, however, an even deeper and more inevitable stage in the healing process: facing pain. A damaged mind cannot be rebuilt with distractions or anesthesia. It only rises when it has the courage to look at its own wounds, to name its traumas, to cross the inner deserts without running away. Our society teaches us to escape pain through consumption, incessant entertainment, and numbing substances, but every escape only postpones the inevitable. True healing only happens through confrontation. It is in pain faced head-on that the soul's most authentic strengths are born. It is necessary to transform suffering into wisdom, failure into learning, the scar into a map. A damaged mind that dares to face its own dark night discovers that, amidst the darkness, there are invisible stars that only shine for those who have the courage to look up. And finally, to recover a mind, to be anified, is to restore the meaning of life. The greatest illness of our era is not pain itself, but the absence of meaning that surrounds it. A life without meaning transforms any pain into despair and any emptiness into an abyss. Finding meaning is finding a greater reason for existence, something that transcends selfishness and the cold logic of survival. It could be love, art, justice, faith, the search for truth, or dedication to a cause. What matters is that this meaning be great enough to carry a wounded mind beyond itself. Meaning gives direction to chaos, transforms scars into testimonies and ruins into foundations. When the mind finds meaning, even if still marked by pain, it becomes indestructible because it discovers that even damaged, it can be a source of light for others walking in darkness.